Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is the weekly Come Follow Me lesson for the Mormon News Report podcast. My name is Jenny Noonan-Dye. I am joining you from Utah, along with my co-host and friend, Brant Malone, joining us from Detroit, Michigan. Of course, I also need to say I'm not alone. Next to me is my husband, John Dye, also joining from Utah. And he is responsible for everything that you are seeing on your screen if you happen to be joining us on our Facebook feed for our weekly lesson. And so thanks to everyone who's joining us, whether in person in real time or if you're listening later on the Mormon News Report podcast. We really appreciate you. Today is Sunday, January 3rd, 2021. And this year's Come Follow Me study is the Doctrine and Covenants. This week's study, Hearken, O ye people, is Doctrine and Covenants, Section 1. That's enough out of me, enough business. Good morning. Happy New Year, Brant.
Oh, Jenny, it's 2021. We did it. We made it. We made it past 2020. Like, how much better can this get? This is what we have been waiting and dying for. This might be this might be difficult for you. I know that you and I have been doing this podcast now for about 3 years, and I'm not sure if you know some of my personality quirks and stuff like that. You might have to bridle me just a little bit because we're getting into church history. And I am so excited to get my church history, as the kids say these days, my church history flex on, my Mormon history nerd on. I am so incredibly excited because the Book of Mormon was fun. The New Testament was nice and spiritual, but D&C, like, this is my bread and butter, folks. This is what I'm excited about.
And I couldn't be more grateful for that, because I'll tell you what, I think this is actually something we need to address probably in this very lesson here at the beginning and maybe, throughout. Just the idea that a lot of people understand that we have the Book of Mormon. A lot of more people understand that we also use it with the Bible, that we believe in the Bible. But wait, there's more. And that's where we are this year in studying church history through the Doctrine and Covenants. I want to acknowledge the people who are chiming in our chat on the Facebook feed. We appreciate you being here. Hello, Happy New Year, good morning to Chris and to Weary in New Zealand.
Only 51 Sundays to go, guys.
That's right. Yeah.
Thanks, Weary.
Let's start the countdown now.
Also, Deborah from Michigan and Ben Bernards from Sacramento, California. Now, we began this a couple of weeks ago, but we should probably, to remind people, Ben and Brant are alternating our Come Follow Me lessons. So we're grateful for Ben stepping in that way and helping out. He always leaves great comments in our discussions, and he has a lot to contribute, as do all the people who join us. We're very grateful. So please feel free to chime in the comments. Let us know where you're participating from. Let us know if there's anything in particular about this week's lesson that stood out to you. But also, Brant, let's just say that I don't know anything at all about church history. And I want to know, wait a minute, I didn't know that you had another book of scripture, what is this? What is Doctrine and Covenants?
You know what? That's a great question. And if you're someone who has not been exposed to the Doctrine and Covenants at all, or your exposure has been very minimal, this might seem a little bit weird, because this is an additional book of scripture that happened during the life of Joseph Smith. These were revelations and different things that Joseph Smith documented during his lifetime, either he personally or his scribes, that came from God and was used as an unfolding of the church in real time. Because we are so used to, in 2021, we're so used to the church being as structured as it is, as formalized as it was. Sometimes it's tough for us to take a step back and to put ourselves in the shoes of Joseph Smith and essentially start a church from nothing. We're a well-oiled machine as a Latter-day Saint people and as an organization, but at that time they weren't. One of my favorite stories about this time came from Truman Madsen, in one of his lectures on Joseph Smith, Joseph Smith receives the revelation on baptism for the dead, tells the congregation, his people are so excited. The early Latter-day Saint church is so excited. They rush down to the river. They're doing baptisms, men for women, women for men. And he has to get in there and go, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not how it goes. And I think that that's one of the most fascinating parts is you get to see the church being developed in real time. You get to see Joseph Smith developing into his role as prophet in real time. We see, and I think that this is a testament to how the Doctrine and Covenants is set up. Joseph Smith is not, I don't know if the right word is ashamed, but he is not shy about including revelations in there where the Lord is commanding him to repent or commanding the people to repent. This isn't a rosy view. This is a very real view. The other thing that's important for everyone to recognize, if you're not familiar with the Doctrine and Covenants, the Doctrine and Covenants is not put together chronologically. As a matter of fact, this revelation that we're going to talk about, D&C 1, was actually done in like 1830. John, Jenny, check me on this, like 1831, 1832-ish, something like that. It wasn't the first revelation that was received.
It's November 1st, 1831.
1830. Oh, I was right. But that's another thing, because it can be a little confusing. I will say, and my apologies to everybody, one thing that I was a little disappointed that the church did this year was they did not do the D&C in chronological order. And if you've ever had the chance to do it, if you go in your scriptures, you can find the chronology of what revelations happened when. I did that once on my mission. I read through it in that way. And it is a marvelous experience to not only go through and see some of the basic rudimentary building blocks that God puts in place for Joseph Smith, but also to see how Joseph Smith expands his way of documenting these revelations, because it would be great if they came through, words to his head to the paper. But for anyone who's done any writing, it's not easy. It's not like that. And being able to document what you're seeing, sensing, feeling is tough. And so, Jenny, I hope that does. There we go. John's pulling it up right there. So you can find this chronological order. We're not going to be doing that. We're going to be going in the numerical order of the revelations. But I really recommend, and I really wish the church would have done it this way, because it really does encapsulate both church history, the development of the church, and Joseph Smith, and it really makes it a marvelous experience.
Notice this too, 66 sections were given before the preface, which is section 1. So as you said, November 1st, Jenny, 1831. But yeah, a lot, almost half of the Doctrine and Covenants was given before the preface was given.
And John, to that point, it makes you wonder, we get 66 sections of the Doctrine and Covenants, and then we get section 1, where the Lord says in section 1, this is the preface to the Doctrine and Covenants. This is what I want in front. And it makes you wonder, and I don't know, maybe we could throw this out for discussion, but it makes you wonder, why did we have to have these 66 revelations before this point, where God now says, okay, now if we're going to publish this, that's one in front.
Wow. Do you know what? I did not know that. I mean, yeah, I didn't know that that was the case, that it isn't presented to us chronologically. And to that point, it makes a lot of sense why the dates are included at the beginning of each section for, in part because of that reason. More people have been chiming in, and good morning and happy new year to Canelang, and also to Patrice, Annette, Donna, Nancy. We're glad that you're all here. Thank you for joining us from all over the place.
Jenny, very quickly, for those of you who are in the Facebook chat, Ben is going to be hanging out in the Facebook chat. Think of Ben like your friendly neighborhood tour guide at your museum. I know he's going to be chiming in. I know he's going to be interacting. But also think about Ben as the bouncer. And if there's anyone who is causing a ruckus, Ben has full authority to throw them out. We've been pretty good, but we've had a few instances. So just think about Ben as your friendly neighborhood tour guide or your big burly bouncer.
Oh my goodness gracious. Wow. Good morning to Mary from Syracuse. Mary joins us regularly. Hello and happy new year to you. Brett, as you were talking about DNC, I mean, there's so much to know, and we've talked about this before. When we talk about the scriptures, when we do our Come Follow Me lessons, one thing that I really want to be sensitive to, I know that I have sat in many, many lessons where the instructor or the person leading the discussion, or even someone making a comment, will use some sort of phrase like, well, you all remember when so-and-so did this. And not everyone knows. And so I'm grateful for your passion about this, because I feel like this is something that we really want to, at least I want to, you know, we in our little private chat that we all have, you and me and John and Ben, in discussing what we're going to be doing with the Mormon News Report, Come Follow Me lessons. I said, you know, you mentioned that you're excited to get your Mormon history nerd on, and I said, hey, I'm here to learn. And I actually want to jump to one of the later verses in this section, in section 1 of the Doctrine and Covenants. Let me see if I can find it. I believe is it 37? I think. Let's see. Yes. Yes. Doctrine and Covenants, section 1, verse 37. And I'll wait while John pulls that up. It says, search these commandments, for they are true and faithful, and the prophecies and promises which are in them shall all be fulfilled. Now, just as we discussed, and for some of us discovered, frankly, 66 sections had been revealed and recorded previously, previous to this section. So now therein lies a promise. Search these commandments, for they are true and faithful, and the prophecies and promises which are in them shall all be fulfilled. So who knows? Maybe that point right there is a huge reason why this revelation, this first section, as we know it now, was given chronologically when it was. Also, I do want to mention, hey, it's a new year. I don't know if you know, and it's not uncommon to, kind of make resolutions or goals. I think it's interesting, Brent, that you were talking about how one perspective we might gain from our study of church history is part of the perspective that of Joseph Smith. Meaning, you mentioned that as a church organization now, we are a well-oiled machine that, and whereas Joseph was creating from scratch. That being said, I feel like a lot, we got a little bit of a taste of that last year, and there have been changes over time. Even a couple of years ago, when we went from 3 hours to 2, and for those who are old enough to remember, going to 3 hours in one day as opposed to spreading it out through the week or whatever it was before. That's what it was, right? Spreading out different meetings throughout the week.
Yes.
I mean, there have been different changes. I'm not discounting what you said, Brent. I just want to, another one of my goals in doing this is to kind of relate what we're studying to our present day experience. And I feel like a lot of us in the past calendar year were left feeling, if not despair, then certainly the unknown of, wait a second, how is this going to go? Which, of course, for Joseph and in establishing this, that was kind of what it was all about continuously for him. So I wanted to mention that, but also I just wanted to invite people I want to invite people to share, if you want to. We'd love to hear, when you read that, section 1, verse 37, search these commandments, for they are true and faithful, and the prophecies and promises which are in them shall all be fulfilled. When you take that into account, along with it being a new year, it being a new year of Come Follow Me study, and maybe some resolutions or goals you may have, what are the things that you will personally be searching for in the Doctrine and Covenants this year? I know for me, like I said, I'm here to learn. For me, it's kind of I want to keep an open mind and an open heart, just as I try to do during any general conference session, and really learn more about the church history that's recorded here.
Jenny, I think that's a great comment. And I think you're absolutely right. One of the best things that I think we can do, and I'll give some resources probably at the end of Come Follow Me today, but one of the best things that we can do when looking and learning more about the Doctrine and Covenants, and I am in no means an expert. I am a hobbyist at best. But one of the best things that we can do is understand the context for everything that was happening in the Doctrine and Covenants. The Book of Mormon is written almost as a narrative. It was done hundreds of years ago, so we don't have much context and we don't have much information. The Bible, we have some of that information because we could look at older records, contemporary records of other things that were going on to kind of place things in certain places. But the Doctrine and Covenants is different because this is essentially, compared to all of Scripture, a modern history of the church. And so while we can look at things like, for example, D&C 76, which talks about Joseph's vision of the 3 degrees of glory in the afterlife, we can actually look at some of the other things that were going on at that time to say, what might have prepared him for this? What was on his mind? Why did this happen? And probably more importantly, what happened after that? Because we have this rich period of American history where we have diaries, we have contemporary accounts, we have all these different things, and there's been a lot of great research there. So I think that's really important. And I'll give some suggestions for some resources that we can use, both approved from the church and also some really quality academic resources for anyone that's interested. But Jenny, I know we like to get to our commenters. Ben actually has a really great comment here that I think we should read.
Before we do that, can we go up to address, because someone asked, right there, Philip asked, good morning from Georgia. He said, do you or someone have a list of the sections chronologically? Yes, Philip, we did share that, and there it is right there in that comment. So please feel free to do that. But yes, let's go. Let's go to that point.
Just really quickly, Philip, you can find that both on the church website, but also if you have the physical scriptures, I believe it's in the first couple of pages of the Doctrine and Covenants. Just like you get the title page and then maybe 1 or 2 pages after that, it'll show the entire chronology there.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Brent. Okay, this from Ben. Why did we have so many sections before the preface, or before this first section? Some ideas. God didn't start the restoration by saying, okay, Joseph, in addition to translating the Book of Mormon and establishing my church and restoring my covenants, you're also going to transcribe everything I say and we'll publish that. We've learned from Joseph's account of Moroni's visits to him as a teenager that sometimes we need things repeated to us because our memories as humans, frankly, are kind of lame. We don't remember things accurately, and it would be so easy to just deceive people and say, God told me XYZ without any proof. So as God was speaking to Joseph and others, at some point, Joseph thought, I should write this down. I need to record what he said. And he copied and transcribed, or asked others to transcribe, because Joseph, where did we go? Because Joseph was a poor bookworm / student. And eventually that collection grew organically until God basically said, cool, looks great. How about you publish that and share it? So those are some good thoughts, that it became it went from a personal record to more of a, yeah, these are all actually official things and we don't want to forget. So let's go ahead and make this record.
And to Ben's point, I mean, that was kind of what Moroni was there doing originally. There was some chastisement going on originally there. And that's important to remember. You have all these rapid changes that are happening within the church. And I'm not, and I was just looking in one of my books to see if I could find it really quick. I can't find it off the top of my head, but I'm sure it was one of those things where it was kind of a consistent poking in the shoulder, like, Joseph, you got to do this. You got to write this down. Big things are happening. And maybe it was, okay, you've proven yourself. We've got a good routine going. All right, let's make this the preface so we could get it out there. Another thing to include in this commentary too is a lot of these revelations, we're used to having a physical book of Doctrine and Covenants. A lot of these revelations were published in church newspapers like the Millennial Star and things like that. And so you have all these things that are coming out, and maybe by the time they got to 1831, after they'd had 66 revelations, maybe that was the time that God said, okay, now let's put it in a book.
Interesting. Yeah. And two, I mean, Ben makes a good point that our memories are pretty lame. I mean, look, in other books of scripture, how many times, not just themes or ideas, but actual words, actual phrases are repeated, because we do need to hear it more than once. And two, I think that it's validating for us. I mean, how many times have we had an experience that was so special or revered or even just personally affirming, even revelatory, and then we question it later? Was that real? It sounds silly and almost like it's something from a movie, but to have the repeat and the record can be validating. You know, there's a reason why the word remember is in the scriptures so often, because we do need to remember, and sometimes those repeats can be remembrances.
And Jenny, your point of and Ben's point about memory is something that I want to talk just a little bit about, because it kind of ties into a lot of what's going on in early church history. So let's talk about one of the elephants in the room here. When it comes to memory, let's talk about the First Vision. The church has done a phenomenal job in the past few years of pushing out the Joseph Smith papers. One of the things that's been included with that has been some topics that have been a little bit uncomfortable for people in the past, including the First Vision. The church, through the Joseph Smith papers, has published in phenomenal, high-quality documents every recorded instance of the First Vision that Joseph Smith either wrote or dictated. So it came directly from him. And it's a great exercise to go through and look at all those different ones, not to sit there and do as some detractors from the church do, to want to point out the differences, but to find what was going on there. Why would Joseph had described things in different ways? And John's pulling it up here. This is a great essay from the church's Gospel Topics website. The reason why I want to bring this up is, one might say the instance that Joseph had of this amazing experience is one that we should be considering. And why would this change? And John, if you could scroll back up to what you were highlighting there, that's an important part. Joseph Smith published, let's see, the various accounts of the First Vision tell a consistent story, though naturally they differ in emphasis and detail. And I've got two thoughts about that. One, as Jenny and Ben alluded to, our memories are not that great. There are people that have studied law, and specifically witness accounts in law, that have found that the memories that we think that we have sometimes change over time, even big dramatic events. But secondly, the important thing with Joseph Smith is, as he grew, as he did all these different accounts of the First Vision, if you ask me, my personal amateur historian perspective, I think he learned how to describe what he was seeing and experiencing much better, because he'd had more of these experiences. And just a personal instance of my own, when I was in college in 2006, I was crossing the street. I was actually talking to my then girlfriend, now wife at the time, who was struck by a vehicle as a pedestrian.
She wasn't with you.
She was not with me. I was talking with her on the phone. I actually had a mobile headset in, so I wasn't, not paying attention. I was struck by a vehicle, and it was actually kind of life-threatening. You could see I've got a little bit of a scar here on my neck that's from this accident. Thankfully, I'm healed. I just got a little bit of knee and back pain here and there. However, that happened in 2006. That was now 15 years ago. And while I think that my storytelling is pretty consistent, when I was doing some cleaning over the holidays, I found a folder that had all the documentation from the hospital, from my lawyer, from all this stuff as I went through and had to, get fixed up from this accident. Do you know what was amazing, Jenny? There was a couple major things in there that I forgot. This was a huge, huge part of my life. I almost died. I had shattered bones and all this stuff. And yet, as I went through, I've told my story about getting hit by a car so many times. I mean, I remember everything vividly. But looking at these pictures, it was almost oh, that's right. And so that's why I think it's important that we document these things. And frankly, I'm disappointed that I didn't do it then. But that's why I'm also so adamant when I talk to future missionaries, just find some time to write in your journal, even if it's the mundane, because you're going to forget it. And you also don't know the effect that it's going to have or the usefulness that it'll have for any future historians if they want to know what was it like in Taiwan or Korea or Georgia or whatever during the age of COVID as a missionary. You might be in a great academic text somewhere. Jenny, how cool is that?
And if not an academic text, you know what? Family history, personal history. Like, why we kind of joke, like, in the future, if it might be like why are, when in the future, when we have our own grandchildren, why are grandma and grandpa like that? Oh, they lived during COVID in Salt Lake during the earthquakes, so they're afraid of everything. So
why do grandma and grandpa get a little bit antsy if people are close to them? Oh, they live through the age of, okay.
Right, exactly. So not just academic potential, but also, for family understanding. Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. And something that's interesting that's in the Sunday school manual, it says, class members might be interested to learn that when a council called by Joseph Smith discussed publishing the prophet's revelations, some council members were opposed to the idea. They were embarrassed by Joseph's weakness in writing, and they worried that publishing the revelations might cause more problems for the saints. Well, if I can be frank, I love that they included that in here. You've got a council called by Joseph himself, and they're like, yeah, no, we don't want to have to answer to your poor writing, frankly. That, we don't want to have to answer because you might not get this right. I don't know in what way he wasn't a strong writer, but I think that that's so interesting. Not only that it happened, but that it's included here because I think, we've, like you mentioned, Brant, with the essays with the Joseph Smith papers, in recent years, there's been more of a concerted, notable effort to address these things from the past that are important to know. And I think that when we consider that's not just kind of the blanket, well, here's a man with a third grade education and look at what was brought to pass because of his efforts, that it really is an example of the Lord using the weak and simple to accomplish his purposes, which is part of what we study in this section. I want to go to Chris's comment. This is a good reason to write in a journal. I wish I had been more consistent when I was younger because my recollection of those events are hazy now. Absolutely. My children received journals for Christmas, and writing in those journals moving forward is going to be directly tied to things like earning screen time, because it's important. It's important to know, not just to record the past, but also to record what your goals are moving forward and how those evolve over time. I want to turn again to this section, and I want to talk about in verses 17 through 23. Or I'm sorry, did I get that wrong? I want to say, there it is, in verse 23, yes. That, let's see, let's go right there. It says, that the fullness of my gospel might be proclaimed by the weak and the simple unto the ends of the world and before kings and rulers. Now, we just read about how the very council that Joseph himself appointed was hesitant to sustain and support the publishing because of Joseph's writing. We know that his formal education was limited. And also, if I may, recently, John got together with some friends who are from his mission. And that was how many years ago?
3 decades, everyone.
Yes. So back in 89 to 91.
Yes, I changed Brent's diapers, I believe. Yes.
So not to make John feel older than he already is, but I was 5 years old when John served his mission.
That's fine.
Yes, I hope you were out of diapers by then.
Who knows at this point, John? Who knows?
But if I may, all these friends in, the age of that they are, around 50 years old, all of them, they were recounting things that Brant, there was one woman who was there who she turned to me and she said, I had no idea that these guys were doing this. And just like goofy things and kind of goofing off, messing. I don't want to get into it, but just things that, man, if that does not describe weak and simple, then I don't know what. And for how many years have we been sending, 18 to 20 something year olds out to proclaim the gospel, to serve others? And I mean, that is 100% the Lord using the weak and simple. And I'm joking sort of, but I mean, it could apply to any of us if we're really getting into it.
You're right. And Jenny, I'm actually looking for a quote here as we do this, but I think that's one of the things that has made me so happy recently about the church is that we are doing a much, much better job at acknowledging that we have individuals that are chosen to lead the church who are flawed. And for a long time, and I won't say that this was a church thing. This was a thing that happened within history. We had a tendency to write hagiographies over people. And a hagiography is almost, the best way to describe it is it's a very favorable way of writing a biography about someone, usually when it comes to people who are to be sainted or something like that. But you talk about how great they were. And that can be very inspiring. Don't get me wrong. That can be very inspiring to hear about the great men and women who've led our country, who've been a part of our world, who've been a part of our history, and a part of our church. The problem sometimes, though, with a hagiography about the church and about people within the church is we don't acknowledge the humanness of everything. And to me personally, a huge part of my testimony is the flawed nature of Joseph Smith, of all these early church leaders, of church leaders now. And the reason why I say this is this is from, bear with me, because we're going to be going like line here. Can
I say something really quickly?
Go ahead.
Is a hagiography the same as people sharing only the best parts of their lives on Instagram right now?
Pretty close.
It makes that type because we're not writing about saints, people headed for sainthood, but in a way, because it's kind of
curated, right?
It's airbrushing, right? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, keep going. I like this.
So bear with me on this. This is Neil A. Maxwell speaking in the 1984 General Conference on a talk called Out of Obscurity. And he is quoting from a journal of George Q. Cannon that was written on the 7th of January, 1898. I bring that up because I can't find the journal anywhere. It might be in the church archive somewhere. But he said, "I can fellowship the president of the church if he does not know everything I know. I saw," George Q. Cannon, "I saw the imperfections in Joseph Smith. I thanked God that he would put upon a man who had those imperfections the power and authority he placed upon him, for I knew that I myself had weakness, and I thought there was a chance for me. I thanked God that I saw these imperfections." And Jenny, I think that's one of the most inspiring messages that we have. We see as we're reading the Doctrine and Covenants and we study this section of church history, we see Joseph Smith growing into his own as an individual, as a leader of the church. We see his flaws at certain times. And for me, I look at God, I look at how God viewed this whole thing, and God saying, "You know what? I don't care. I'm going to mold you how I need you to be. And so I don't care." John's pulling it up right here. Like this is a huge part of my faith, because I think that this is so important. And to be honest, it helps me sometimes when I see those flaws come out in local church leaders, in overall church leaders, because I remind myself that we are all humans. Humans make mistakes. Sometimes we flub our words. It happens. And I think that's the downside of consistently having these rosy, almost sanctified views. I like getting down into the warts and all with Joseph Smith, not because I want to see the warts, but because I sit there and go, wow, Joseph Smith, he kind of had a temper, didn't he? Joseph Smith, he held grudges. And still, he was able to overcome that. And he had a group of people that followed him, that were loyal till the end. And God was able to take Joseph with all those flaws and do exactly what he needed to accomplish his purposes.
Yes, thank you for that. I want to go to, excuse me, Chris's comment, which goes exactly to what you're saying, Brant. What everyone needs to remember is that even our beloved prophet is a human and makes mistakes, and he'd be the first one to say he's not perfect. President Monson was quite a character when he was young. Read his biography. The gospel is perfect. The members of the church are striving towards perfection.
I totally agree with that. And Jenny, I know that I can be impatient sometimes with my fellow members of the church, but that's the thing that I personally need to work on this year, is having a little more patience and tolerance. And we've talked about it on our news podcast before. When we first found out that President Russell M. Nelson was going, after President Monson passed, and President Nelson was going to be the president, for me, I was like, okay, I don't think anything's going to change. And what happened? He proved all of us wrong, which I think goes to show we can see the development that happens with people, and we need to, I don't know, give people room to change.
To be honest, it also is a highlight of the atonement and what it encompasses. I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more that we need to remember that and not idolize the leaders that we have.
Not to quote, not to bring this into a lot of the secularist part of the world, but just so everyone's aware, over the holiday break, I rewatched Rocky IV, which was phenomenal. Okay. And there's a line at the very end of Rocky IV after he's gotten into this huge fight with Ivan Drago. They're all beat up and bloodied. And he's talking to everyone in the Soviet Union, all the Soviets. And he goes, if I can change, then you can change and we can all change. That's what we need to remember. If I can change, then you can change and we can all change. Life lessons from Rocky Balboa.
I love it. That's a good, we can have a seminary lesson on that. We need
a crossover universe with Lord of the Rings, right?
Oh.
There we go. Yeah.
I want to go to another comment here that Ben has put in our comment section. Thoughts on Joseph's weakness, which he references verses 24 to 28. It's quite unusual for God to tell us specifically what to look for in the scriptures. Usually they just provide the content and leave the commentary to others. But something is different here. Something we apparently need to be reminded of, something we should be sure to include in our calculations as we look through the lens of history, lest our perspective of what happened and who did it be distorted. Look closely at what God calls out. Number 1, people made mistakes and he wants us to know about it. Number 2, people sought wisdom and they got answers. Number 3, people sinned and were held accountable and needed to repent. Number 4, people were humble, repented, were made strong, and got knowledge. What is significant about the order and priority of these callouts? How do these callouts shape our memory and expectation of Joseph Smith, Oliver, Emma, and those who came before? And how does this perspective of past church leaders influence our expectation of leaders today, both at the general and local levels? That's excellent, because I think that is something that we've talked before about how what we know is that when we find words of our leaders speaking as prophets that contradict over time, that what we go to our current leaders. I think there's an element missing there in that we need to understand that we are in the process of learning. We are in the process of growth, our leaders included, and that there may be a possibility that what our leaders say that we go to now could change in the future. I know I could get a lot of feedback from, pushback from that comment, but if we look over time and how that has happened, that's absolutely the case. And I feel like there's a lot of discord and discontent and just general upheaval when we don't allow for that to happen with the leaders that we sustain today, locally and on a general level.
We've talked a little bit in the past on the podcast with a lot of the changes that have come out of the church around General Conference time about change management, and change can be hard for people. And I think that we saw that, for example, with the change in missionaries being allowed to call home once a week. There were some people who said, no. It's making it too easy for these kids. And I think that sometimes that's what we need to remember. When the church was first started back in the 1830s, they were considered radical, extremely radical. Wait a minute. You're saying that the canon is not closed, that it's still open. You're saying that God still talks to man? I don't know about that. I mean, we just have the Bible, and some of the other things that they were doing. They were not opposed. It's not that they were actively promoting abolitionist movements when it came to slavery, but they were also not supportive of slavery. That in some parts, for example, down in Missouri, was considered radical. Like the people of Missouri were threatened by that. Wait a minute, our slave industry might be disrupted because of these Mormons coming in. So the Latter-day Saint Church was radical in the sense of they were upending a lot of things about organized religion at that time. And yet we got into this mode of being very conservative and we don't change too much. And then within the past 2 or 3 years, since President Nelson has been at the helm, we've seen a lot of change. And it's amazing that sometimes, and this is where we need to extend empathy for people who it might take them a little bit of time to get used to some of these changes, but we've seen a lot of change happening. We are a church of changes, of revelation, and we don't believe that we are going to be stagnant. And sometimes that can be difficult, but we should also be embracing that. God is still here. He is still navigating the church where he needs to go. And I find that incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
Jenny, just really quickly, because I know we're running out of time. Can I make a few book recommendations for us as we go through the Doctrine and Covenants? Because, like I said, there's a lot of context that's important. So I know John's got a few pictures up that we're going to use. The first one I want to recommend is from the church. It's from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I'm sure many of us have heard about it. It's the book of the narrative history of the church called Saints. So volume 1 is out. I believe volume 2 is already out as well. Really, really recommend this. I know people who have worked on this, both on the historian side, but also on the narrative side. So the historian side, what they tried to do is they tried to make sure that every statement that they were making, they could reference it. And it's got a ton of footnotes. If you're someone like me who loves footnotes, like this is chock full of them. And they're great, great historians. Like I need to emphasize how good of a job the church historians department does. The Joseph Smith Papers Project is something that the church has invested significant amounts of money in. And the fact that they made it all for free for everybody is amazing. I know the books are expensive, but the books are expensive because they're done on high quality paper and things like that. But you can go on their website and get everything. It's the same department that's doing Saints. Additionally, Jenny and I know a few of the people who are involved with the writing of Saints because they also wanted to make sure that it was written well enough so that people could be engaged with it. It wouldn't be over their heads like a very dry academic text. And I have nothing but good things to say about Saints and what they're doing with it. So that's a really good one. The other one that I want to recommend came out a few years ago, and it's called Revelations in Context. Again, it was published by the church. It was published in 2016. I've got a copy of it right there. John's pulling it up as well. Revelations in Context is really, really good for understanding what's going on inside the revelation. So, for example, there's going to be a revelation coming up that's going to talk about the rod of Aaron. Well, you need to understand a little bit about 1800s America, divining rods, why they were talking about it. That is something that's important to understand, and Revelations in Context will do a great job of helping you out with that. Again, I think if you want to buy it, it's only $3 from the church store, but you can also get it online for free. Again, not too dry, not too academic, really, really good. The last recommendations I have, it's important to understand a lot of the major players that were involved with the early church history. Because if you understand about what was going on in their lives, you're going to understand a little bit more about the revelations and what was going on. So the first one I have to recommend is about Hale Smith. She's a very important figure, and I really wish we had more information on her. There's a couple books out there, but the best one that I found is one called Mormon Enigma that was written by Linda King Newell and Val Avery. It was written back in the 80s, an incredible book that the scholarship still matches up. Let's see, I was born in the 80s, so I'm going to be 37 this year. So 37 years later, the scholarship still holds up. So I really recommend this book if you want to understand Emma, especially as we get into the development of the Relief Society and that naughty P word, polygamy. The last recommendation I have, and this is required reading for everybody, but it is Joseph Smith, Rough Stone Rolling. It was written by Richard Bushman. This is a big, thick book. I mean, Look at that. That's a thick book, okay? But, and it can be dry in some parts, but this is, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people who study Mormon history, both academically and casually, this is the best book that has ever been written about Joseph Smith. Richard Bushman is actually a practicing member of the church. I believe he's a patriarch. And really spent some time trying to write this book both as objectively as he could, but also to make sure that it was written as accurately as he could. So really recommend Joseph Smith, Rough Stone Rolling as well. And we'll probably have some references to this here and there as we go throughout the Doctrine and Covenants. But if you're someone who's saying, look, I'm interested in wanting to know the context, these are a few books that would really help out.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you, Brant. I know that there are several more. You actually had to kind of whittle down your list of recommendations because this is something that is you're very passionate about it. So thank you for that.
Jenny, I was literally twiddling my fingers, looking at my bookshelf going, oh, this would be, oh, this is a good, oh, what about this one? So I did have to pull myself back a little bit.
Good. Well, we couldn't be luckier to be studying this with you this year. So thank you. I want to thank everyone for joining us. And I have a kind of request for this upcoming week's study and next week's lesson, which I should remind everyone, next week's lesson will be a week from today, Sunday, January 10th, around 9:10, 9:15 a.m. Mountain Time, and all the other times in between around the globe. The lesson is called I Saw a Pillar of Light. And the reading assignment for the lesson is Joseph Smith History 1 through 26. And what I want to just invite everyone to do, or just kind of to make it a little, hopefully more meaningful, I don't want to contradict myself from earlier and say we've all read this, because maybe we haven't. But whether you have never actually read this passage of scripture, or if you've read it dozens or even hundreds of times, one thing I'm going to try to do in studying this week is I'm going to try to find something new. Instead of kind of reverting to or resorting to, well, yes, and then this happened, and then this happened, whether it's from the actual physical events or the spiritual aspect of the events, try to find something new to you personally. And that could be, again, it's personal. I'm not asking you to return and report or anything of that nature, just to hopefully make it a little more meaningful for your study this week. So thanks again to everyone who has participated in this lesson, whether on the live Facebook feed, by leaving comments or not, by sitting to my side and making the screen and all the references and looking things up and sharing images. Thank you, John, for doing that. Thank you, Brant, as always. Thank you, Ben. And thanks to everyone. I hope everyone has a wonderful week. Don't forget to tune in as we start this new year with the Mormon News Report podcast, which you can find on any of your pod fetching apps. And we look forward to getting into it, to keep going and see what we can make of this year. So
you're right, Jenny, just really quickly, we are back from our break. We will be recording this week. We're going to be talking about what happened over the holidays. What are we looking forward to in 2021? And what Mormon news happened that we should be talking about? I am rested. I am pumped. I've got caffeine flowing through the veins. Jenny, I'm ready to get back at this year and wrap up my school so that we can dedicate more time to the Mormon News Report.
Excellent. Well, thanks to everyone again. Happy New Year, and we will see you again very soon.
Thanks, everyone.